You gonna sit in the back and be good? Yeah? Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Laura and I am the illustrator and creator of Laura Jane Illustrations on Instagram. If you don't already follow me over there, I have all of my social links in the description box below, so be sure to go and follow me over there as well to keep up with more of what I'm doing on a weekly basis, as well as all of my posts over there. This week I'm doing another sit down and chat video. Mimi is here beside me. Today I wanted to talk about back to school anxiety and a little bit about anxiety in general, but today specifically anxiety related to going back to school or going back to work. I think that this is something that isn't really talked about a lot. This is something that can affect young people returning to their regular routine after the summer in a normal year, but I feel like this year more so than ever because the whole certainty aspect of what's going to happen when we go back to school and back to work has kind of been removed, and I think it's important that we talk about that a little bit. Before I get into it, I wanted to put a little bit of a disclaimer. I am not a psychologist or a therapist. Everything that I talk about in this video is coming from my personal experiences. If you are struggling with anxiety or mental health and you want professional support, or there's someone in your life that you feel needs some extra support with this, I have listed lots of resources and links in the description box under this video. Equally, if anyone watching this has links or resources that they found useful in their personal mental health journey, I encourage you to leave them in the comments. As I said, today I would like to talk about anxiety because it's a topic that is very close to my heart personally. If you've been following me over on Laura Jane Illustrations and Instagram for a while, you will have seen me talk a lot about my personal experience with anxiety and mental health, especially when I was in university. My personal experiences and the lack of information and kind of the lack of conversation around the subject is really what drives me to push myself out of my comfort zone now and to continue to talk about it. I would like to start with a definition of anxiety because from my personal journey, the thing that pushed me to go to my college campus student support services in the first place was when I read a definition of anxiety for the first time. This is coming from the mind.org.uk website. They have so much information on anxiety on their page. First of all, what is anxiety? Anxiety is what we feel when we are worried, tense, or afraid, particularly about things that are about to happen or which we think are going to happen in the future. Anxiety is a normal human response when we perceive that we are under threat. It can be experienced through our thoughts, feelings, as well as physical sensations. So an interesting thing about anxiety is that it comes from our kind of caveman, prehistoric hardwiring. It's our brain's response to things that have kind of caused us harm in the past, and when our brain thinks that those things might happen again, or that we're putting ourselves into situations where those things might happen again, that's when anxiety kicks in. So that's anxiety kind of on a general. Today I kind of wanted to focus in on anxiety in relation to going back to school. Why? Because first of all, it's something that I personally have definitely struggled with in the past as a student going to school or university, but also as a teacher going back to school to work. This year, the thing I just keep thinking about is how many people going back to school as students, as returning to university, or as returning as teachers have all of that general anxiety stressors first of all, and now we have this whole new thing that none of us expected to have to deal with this year, which is the pandemic. So let's talk about that. Now we have the other side of it where we're getting to go back to normal. I see this a lot right now online. People are talking about going back to normal. the lockdown is over, we get to go back to normal. We get to transition back to normal. There's a lot of that use of that word, transition, right now. But no one is talking about the mental health effects of this transition back to normal. And I think the key word in that phrase that's really personally bothering me right now as a human being who struggles with anxiety, first of all, but also as someone who in my everyday role as a teacher has to think about the mental health and the mental well-being of the children in my care. I don't like the fact that people are using that word normal around this transition and returning to school. First of all, it's not going to be what it was before. So we're talking a lot about returning normal, but we're not preparing ourselves really for the impact of life after lockdown. There are a lot of new regulations in workplaces, in public transport, in schools and universities that we have to prepare ourselves for, and we have to prepare as a parent or a teacher to prepare our kids for going back and facing. So if you're watching this as a parent, that's something really important to think about, that language around returning to normal. If you're watching this as a student who's really worried about going back to school because of these changes, looking at the changes that are going to happen can be helpful so you can kind of prepare yourself for what you need to expect. I also think the second issue with this mentality that everyone seems to have around back to normal is what I kind of see, and the way people are talking about it is kind of like, we just have to get back to school and back to work and back to normal, and then everything that we just went through we can forget about and we can move on from it and we can kind of pretend that it didn't happen. This mentality of let's go back to normal and forget everything happened is not going to help us process what we've been through. If we're just focusing on this going back to normal, we're not giving people the opportunity to talk about that. For me personally, the problem around that is going back to normal means going back out into this world that for the last few months we have been bombarded with information about why we should be afraid of going out there. So we need to be sensitive to the fact that for a lot of people, this transition back into regular routines is going to be difficult, because it's going to mean going on public transport. It's going to mean seeing other people. It's going to mean going out of the house every day. The point of this video is to spark that conversation and to hopefully help you guys to reflect on something that I've been reflecting a lot about for the last couple of weeks. I mean, pretty much since last June, I have been thinking about what is September going to be? What's it going to feel like? If you're feeling anxious in the next couple of weeks when you go back to school or when you go back to work, talk to someone at home about it. Switch off the TV at dinner time, put down your phones, have meaningful conversations. How was your day today? It was rubbish. That's okay. If you've had a really stressful and anxious day, the worst thing you can do for yourself is to keep it in here, because that means when you go to sleep, you're keeping it there. When you wake up the next morning, your anxiety is going to be heightened again because your brain is doing that fight or flight thing of yesterday was really bad. You should probably not put yourself in that situation again. Talking about it lifts it out of here, and it kind of disconnects you yourself from this thing that you're scared of. Having other people's perspectives on something, or just having a conversation and hearing someone else go, I'm worried about this too and I feel the same as you, it's good. It makes us feel less alone. Let's not do that thing where we avoid talking about mental health, where we avoid dealing with the fact that everyone, or at least most people, are going to be struggling with this. This is not a normal back to school season. And even if everything that happened this year hadn't happened, I do still think it's really important that we become aware of mental health and well-being on a general basis anyway, and especially around times in our lives when there's big change in routine and big adjustment. I wanted to share my experiences and my thoughts and my feelings on the subject in hope that it would, first of all, make those of you watching feel less alone if you're also experiencing the same fears and worries about returning to routine, but also to hopefully encourage conversations around a subject that I just feel is not being talked about online right now, or in general in lives. So the comments are open. As I said, I encourage you to share any mental health resources or links that you have found personally useful. Also share your feelings and your experiences of right now, what you're feeling about going back to school and work, in the comments below, and let's open up this conversation. Conversations on mental health are really important. So is professional support and education on the subject, so we can't have one without the other. Inform yourself, look at some of the resources that I've shared below, reach out to a professional in your life to get that support as well. But also have those conversations with real people in your life. Ask people how they're feeling. If you notice people that you love are stressed and anxious and nervous about September, talk to them about it. Let them know that you are there to listen to them, and maybe that conversation can start by you opening up and sharing what you're going through. So that's kind of all that I want to say on this subject. I hope that everything that I've said makes sense. I will see you again next week for another video, and until then, remember, you are not alone, you are loved, you are worthy, your feelings are valid and important, and we can get through this together.